and I know some of you have met me in person. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I got an email from LinkedIn that said, congratulations on 28 years at Demopoulos Associates. I was like, what? I've been consulting for 28 years? No way, that makes no sense. And now it's like 30 years. And I realized that the questions I'd gotten the most commonly from people, from both SANS students and from other folks, had been about consulting. How do you get clients? How do you set pricing? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I've always said, I don't know. This is what works for me. So in the last couple of years, I've started asking a lot of other consultants what's worked for them. And I put together a 2-day class called Successful Infosec Consulting. It's run several times online. We've got some alumni, some very notable alumni that have gone on. Some you may know because they're associated with SANS, are Tim Medine, Mick Douglas, David Cicilli, Ken Hartman, Doc Blackburn. I could mention others who have taken the class and done phenomenally well. Started at and become full-time consultants. David already was consulting. Now, they probably would have done really well anyway because they're smart and hardworking people. But they've all had some pretty nice things to say. Now, this was scheduled with SANS a number of times, but as you know, all in-person classes have been changed, canceled, modified, and it will be available soon as the SANS Live online. I'd love to give you actual dates, but we don't know them right now. Now, first, we've got to talk about what's going on now, right? Times are obviously tough and really strange. A lot of my friends have lost work, have lost their jobs. Now, for those of you that know me, you know I tend to hang out in bars and restaurants. I'm a foodie and I'm a cocktail geek. And obviously, a lot of my friends in the service industry and hospitality have lost their jobs because restaurants and bars aren't open. And a lot of my friends in other fields, including Infosec, we haven't been immune. Most people are doing okay. Hopefully you are, but I have a lot of friends that have been furloughed. Not even sure what that means. Laid off. Sometimes positions have been deleted and so forth. Most consultants have lost work too. I certainly have. At least 90% of my work until very recently was travel. In fact, the day that Trump said he was closing the borders to Europe, I flew back through Europe. I was sitting on the Red Sea getting ready to go to Petra in Jordan and check that out. I was teaching a SANS class in Jeddah on the Red Sea. Most of my work got canceled. I pretty quickly replaced it with new work, and I sometimes joke with my friends that, and it's not really a joke, I'm either going to make half as much money as I made last year or twice as much because I'm scrambling to make things happen. Now, I'm going to make the argument that maybe as an established consultant, you have more security with your work than as an employee or a contractor, right? Most consultants have multiple clients. An employee has someplace they work. A contractor typically has one major contract. Most contractors have one contract. If they lose it, they don't have work. If all of a sudden one of my clients stopped giving me work, I have other clients, right? So people always say, well, you know, I'm interested in consulting, but I need that steady paycheck and it's risky. And maybe, just maybe, being a consultant, once you're established, right, is more secure work-wise. That's something to think about. Now, I'm going to talk, is this a bad time to start consulting? Well, maybe you want to start consulting or just interested. Maybe you need to, right? Maybe you're looking for work. Maybe you're out of work. I started consulting in 1990. It was a recession. It was nothing like now. Now, we don't know what it's going to be like now. We don't really know what's happening. This was referred to as a recession and then a jobless recovery. It was an anemic recovery. And everyone and their uncle and their cat and their dog was claiming they were a consultant back then. Okay, you can claim you're a consultant, but if you've never had a client, don't think you're getting one soon and are really looking for a full-time job. You're just unemployed, right? You're not a consultant. And there was a lot of competition, but I did okay. Now, it's not that easy to Google small companies, to find small companies that started when times were bad and that were successful, because they're not that well known. But a lot of very successful companies started when times were bad. Thomas and Edison may have been a genius, but starting General Electric during a global recession, that wasn't the best time. And 3 years later, the US economy crashed and there was a rush on gold. Not a good time to start, but GE's been pretty successful. Disney, although Roy and Walt did some work in some cartooning work in literally their uncle's garage beforehand. A lot of companies start in garages. The Disney we know incorporated during the Great Depression. That's Great Depression with capital Great, capital Depression. Right, and CNN, the cable news network. Ted Turner announced this in 1980 when it was kind of a crazy idea. Like news 24 hours a day? No, the news comes on 2 times a day at 6 and 11, or I thought it was 6 and 11. I was kind of young at the time. That was a so-called double dip recession. Apple started during a downturn in 75. Now the Apple that we know and maybe love, and I'm a bit of an Apple fanboy, although I'm on a Windows machine now, started in 2001. A lot of us remember what happened in 2000, right? It was the dot-com crash. This was not a good time to be in high tech. So let's just dive in, okay? This is the most popular part of my class on how to get clients. There's other things we could talk about, like pricing issues and whether you should incorporate or be a sole proprietorship or LLC. We're not going into that. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to do a deep dive into how to get clients. Now, just like if you watch a movie on an airplane, boy, I haven't been on an airplane in like a month. Actually, literally a month. It's the longest time in my almost adult life. They'll tell you the movie's been slightly modified, right? The materials have been modified and condensed to try to give you maximum value, and we've just got an hour, right? So I've taken out some of the less dense material, and I may have more slides they can go over comfortably. We're going to take time on the most important to most people. And the other important things, we may go over faster near the end. And that's okay, because you get a copy of the slides, so you get all of the materials. Now, the last time I taught this, session 2 was a little over 2 hours, and we got about an hour, right? And we're concentrating on the easiest ways to get clients. Now, obviously, to be successful as a consultant, you need clients. Now, here's what people don't understand. At least I didn't understand it. You don't need a lot of clients. You don't. Why? Some clients will stay clients for a very long time. Some clients will give you a lot of work. And some clients fall into both categories. Tend to call them mothership clients. Now, this is a term actually from David Chappell, who was one of the first consultants I ever met in my career. And he just used this term. SANS Institute. All right, I've been doing work with SANS for over 16 years. Many of the times they've qualified as a mothership client, like certainly last year, and it looks like this year too. There's been other years where, one year I think I did 3 weeks of work for them. I was busy doing other things. And the Open Software Foundation, this was a consortium way back. They're now called the Open Group. They merged with someone called X-Open. I did a lot of work with them for 8 years. Digital Equipment Corporation, which was bought by Compaq and then bought by Hewlett-Packard. Man, they wanted me to live there almost for like 8 years. I had other clients at the time, but once I got in, it wasn't easy to get in. I had a lot of work. And there's a bunch of other companies listed there that were long, multi-year clients. You want to treat your clients well, right? Because hopefully they'll be clients for a long time. And also just because you want to work with people you like. Now, there's 2 possibilities with acquiring clients. One is the clients come to you. We call this inbound marketing. And we're going to look at some concrete examples very soon. This is going to be very concrete. Why would clients come to you? Well, they're going to have to know about you, right? Maybe they know you personally, or maybe you're an acknowledged expert. Maybe you wrote the book on the topic, and I am writing a book on consulting now. Or maybe they were Googling and they found a great article, or maybe you have 60 hours of YouTube videos on some specific topic in Infosec. A friend of mine does, in fact. Or you could go to the clients. Sometimes it's called outbound marketing or direct reach. Now this is not hard. It's not hard to contact past colleagues and friends. That's easy enough. There's other types of outbound marketing that aren't tough. This constitutes outbound marketing, right? What I'm doing right now. Absolutely. And some types, I'm just never going to do it. I'm not going to do any cold calling. It's not easy. I'm not going to do it. You're probably not going to either. But some of this outbound marketing is easy. Now, we use the term marketing. Okay. Marketing is really just putting your best foot forward, portraying yourself in a positive light, or whatever you're marketing in a positive light. And as a consultant or wannabe consultant, you're marketing yourself and your skills. How can you do this? A lot of ways. How about one thing? Just doing good stuff, helping people and so forth. And we'll look at quite a bit of this. Now, market research. We're not going to go deep dive in market research. Some of you know I occasionally do surveys and so forth online, but it helps you determine what you sell and who you're going to sell it to. Now, if you're working in a field and you decide you want to consult, right? Let's say you're, doing Windows forensics. You don't have to do much market research because you're already in that market, right? You already know what's going on there. Now, I'm not saying these are areas in consulting you should get involved in. But I'm saying these are 3 pretty hot areas right now, and this is from market research. Incident response and forensics, right? DFIR, digital forensics and incident response. There's a lot of demand there. Penetration testing, right? All kinds of areas. I used to do penetration testing way back, and I used to be an incident handler way back as well. Privacy, including GDPR. And certainly it's not security, but related. There is overlap with security. I'm looking a little more at privacy just to know more. Not that I want to consult in the area. I don't find it particularly interesting compared to other things. But I know these are pretty hot areas right now just from market research. Now, here are 11 ways to get clients. Okay, we're going to start with the easiest ways, the ones that are most likely to work and work quickly. And we'll move to ways that are very functional, that absolutely work. And we'll spend a little less time on ways that are less likely to work, at least initially. First of all, let's talk about who your most likely clients are. Okay, there is risk in hiring someone, whether it's as a full-time employee or as a consultant, right? So because of that, as a consultant, it's hard to convince someone to work with you for the first time. But what if they've already worked with you? What if you already worked together, right? Then hopefully they know you're good, right? They know you deliver. They know you are a professional and you have skills and so forth. It's much easier to convince someone you've worked with before. Sometimes there's no convincing. They just have a need and you can fill it. You've definitely worked with those before successfully, right? Who are they, right? Where are they? This used to be harder way back before social media, things like LinkedIn and so forth. It's like, hey, I wonder what happened to Jerry. Man, that was a great project we worked on like 4 years ago. Well, I heard he moved here. It's easier now. So how do we get clients to come to us? Okay, in order for clients to come to you, and that's ideal, right? They need to know who you are, right? They need to know who you are. You need some visibility. They need to know that you can help them. They need to believe that you can actually help them. They have to trust you, right? They have to trust that you can help them. Let's look at some examples. Okay. So I was working at Hewlett-Packard. I was planning on leaving. My goal was to travel for a few months and then to try out consulting. I was single. I had no mortgage. Life was easier then. I got all kinds of kids now. You might even hear them in the background. Well, turns out several former colleagues, people I work with at Hewlett-Packard, had gone to a new industry consortium. It was called the Open Software Foundation. There was an event they hosted, and I went to it, okay? And there was a talk, and after the talk, there were a bunch of questions, and many of the questions, the guy that gave the talk couldn't answer, but it's like I had some background he didn't. It's like the answers were pretty obvious to me, so I was like answering some questions, and they were using some previously existing technologies in this thing they were talking about, including Kerberos and so forth, which I knew okay. And they're like, well, we know Ted. Ted's good. We've worked with him before. Boy, could we use him. And they really quickly offered me work. Now, they offered me a full-time job. It was like, you got to come work for us. It's like, I don't want to work for you. I have a job. It's like, well, you should have a job with us. I was like, I don't want a job. You don't get it. And so I started consulting with them. Now, it's pretty common for former colleagues to hire you as a consultant, right? Stay in touch with them. If you've worked for, let's say, 5 years or 10 years, even 2 years, you know people that have gone to other organizations. Some of them you become friends with, even if you're not actual friends, right? Maybe you don't have enough in common, you haven't spent time together. Stay in touch with them. So here's another example. I was staying at a friend's place in Los Angeles. Okay, this was early 90s. And I'd spoken, speaking is a great way to get clients. We'll get to that. I'd spoken at an IBM conference. And I'm staying at my friend Kenny Curler's house. Okay, and there was this guy, Bob, I had met before. A small software company called Gradient Technologies. They were in Marlborough, Mass. And I had met Bob once at a conference. I remember we'd spoken. We might have even gotten a beer or two afterwards. I can't remember. I remember we had hit it off. And he tracked me down. My last name, Demopoulos. Not that unusual, but it's not common. He knew I was in New Hampshire. He looked in the phone book. He found my mother. My mother gave him the number. This is pre-Google. She gave him the number to my friend Kenny Curler's. Kenny was like, hey, there's some guy on the phone for you. So I talked to him. I was like, oh, yeah, Bob, I remembered him. He said, hey, would you mind calling this guy Howard? Right. Howard has some issues with something he's working on. You could probably help him out just like real quickly, answer a couple questions. So I call Howard. Now, it turns out Howard was amazingly local, like 10 miles away in Torrance, California. And we hit it off. Howard, a great guy. He's retired now. We're still in touch. We hear from each other, a few times a year. He's like, can you come in on Monday for the day? Now, I had plans. I had been studying Spanish. I was planning on going to Baja, Mexico for at least 8 months and traveling around aimlessly. Remember, I wanted to travel. When I left my job, I didn't want to start consulting right away. Yeah, it didn't really work out. Right? So I went in Monday. I said, yeah, I can go in Monday. No problem. I ended up working for 12 weeks with Howard on this proposal. We stayed in LA for a while, then we're up in the San Francisco area for a while. It was a lot of fun. Going to Mexico would have been a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun too. The clients came to me. And by the way, like almost 30 years later, 27 years or something, ended up going to Mexico about 18 months ago. No, about 2 years ago with Chris Crowley on a mezcal drinking trip. And we were going to go again this month. Obviously, that got canceled. Third example. Okay, Hewlett-Packard. Now, I left on really good terms. I didn't fit in there, I'll be honest. Good company, right? Nothing wrong with the company. I worked with fine people. But I worked for a small startup they had bought, and I didn't really fit in with the culture. But I left on really good terms. I timed when I left so that I didn't negatively impact anybody, or as little as possible. And I told them, I said, if you want, I'll stay longer, but I'm out of here. I'll do whatever I can. And I stayed in touch, gone back a few times, seen my own group lunch a couple times, and so forth. They knew how to contact me. They knew I was a consultant. They knew from experience I was good. I was a trustworthy professional, even though I didn't fit the HP mold at all, at least not in that office. But they hired me. Now, this one totally shocked me. I never expected that, but they came to me. Another example. I reached out to a friend I found online. Okay, my friend Mark. I didn't know what had happened to him after college. We'd lost track of each other. It'd been quite a few years. I reached out to him. I found an email for him. I just sent an email. Hey, man, what you doing? What's up? I haven't heard from you in a long time. Hope you're well. Turns out, unbeknownst to me, he was working for Gartner, and he recommended me for a keynote speech with a defense contract management agency at the Department of Defense. Potential client from the DoD called. We had a great conversation. And he told me, it's like, yeah, we're really interested in having you speak. And this was a well-paid speech, but there's a committee. Committees, we're looking at a couple of other people. Now, after we got off the phone, and he did not know how to spell my last name, he had a number, right? Call Ted, something, Opopopopoulos. He Googled me. He found things I had written. He was obviously impressed by what I had written in writing, which we're going to talk about. Is a great way to help build your footprint online and expertise and attract clients. And he called me right back and he said, I'm in charge of the committee. You want it. You want the work. You got it. That was great. Now, here's a bad example. Okay. I got this email on a Friday night. Okay. Oh, wait, no, sorry. This is a good example. We'll see a bad example later. I got this email, literally word for word. I just removed the guy's name and the conference. Hello, comma, not even my name. It looks like a spam almost. I would like to discuss the possibility of having you keynote our conference in April of this year. Are you open the 26th of April? And if so, could we please arrange a call? Kind regards, right? Kind of generic. Now, I got this late on a Friday night. He had sent it fairly late. I didn't see it till about midnight. I often do not answer email very late at night. I'll read it, but if it's someone I don't know, I sometimes send stupid emails late at night, I'll be honest. And the next morning I didn't answer it because I think I left the house at 6:30, 6:45 a.m. to go skiing with my daughter. It's like, I'm going to answer this, but at night it kind of looks generic, right? They probably sent this to, like, I don't know, 50 people, who knows? Well, while I'm on a ski lift, someone else from this organization sends me a LinkedIn message, and the name's kind of familiar. Can't quite place it, but the name's familiar. So I reply to him, and it's like, yeah, no, I got an email late last night from this person, but I'm literally on a ski lift right now with my daughter. I can't answer. He says, okay, well, just follow up with them. I did that night. I was flying that Sunday. That Sunday, I told him, it's like, I should safely be in my hotel room by 8 p.m. I remember I was in Miami. We spoke at 8 p.m., spoke for 20, 30 minutes at most, maybe less. Before the phone call was over, I had money in my PayPal account. A few $1,000s was sent as a retainer for me to speak. All right, they just came to me. We'll talk about how to make these things happen too. Second, okay, when people don't come to you, you can go to people. Direct outreach to people you know. It's very easy to reach out to someone you know. Right? Like, hey man, what's happening? Haven't heard from you in a long time. Oh, you're working there? What's that like? Hopefully things are going well. Now, you might just say hello. You might let them know about something specific. Sometimes it's easier if you have a specific reason. Right? It could even be like Happy New Year's or Happy 4th of July or whatever. You can just ask people to launch. That works. I worked with a consultant in Hong Kong named Tony Corrado. And Tony, I think Tony's retired now or close to it. He's a little older than I am. And every week, at least 2 days, he'd disappear. He'd go have lunch with someone else. Now, Hong Kong's a big metropolis, and he only worked in the Hong Kong area. And that's how he got all his clients, just by having lunch with people. And Tony likes to eat. It was like a perfect match, right? Now, obviously, this doesn't scale, and you got to be in a large metropolitan area to do it a lot at least. So here's an example. Now, this didn't actually happen today. It did when I wrote this slide. I'll be finishing my CSPO, Chief Security and Privacy Officer, is what he was, with it was a really big company in Singapore by early March. I'm now actively looking for more work, probably consulting/advisor, anywhere in the world, provided this is fun and well paid. That's two things. It's got to be fun. It's got to be well paid. This friend of mine has a lot of kids. Would you have any pointers? And then a little bit more. Now, very important thing here. This friend of mine didn't reach out because he needed something after me not hearing from him for years, right? He had been in touch with me on a regular basis. In fact, I've heard from him in the last week or so. And in fact, he's moved to Zurich and he's consulting in Zurich now. He really wanted to move the family ideally to Europe, and he ended up doing that. He'd spent enough time in Asia Pacific, but he directly reached out. Now, I did not find him any work. I sent him a couple people. He probably reached out to a few close contacts, and he did get consulting work. Now, when I first decided to start consulting and gave my notice at Hewlett-Packard, my 2-week notice, I spent 2 weeks on the telephone calling people and telling them. I sent a lot of emails. Not everyone used email in 1990. Today, I'd use a lot more email. I'd use a lot more social media. I'd be texting people. If it had been 20 years earlier, I probably would have been faxing people or something like that. Yeah, fax machines still exist. Somebody wanted my fax number last Friday, which was kind of amusing. I just going to start consulting. You tell everybody. I mean, I told all my professional contacts, my high school friends. High school friend actually ended up not hiring me, but somebody 2 levels down from them hired me. A high school friend I hadn't heard from high school. And when the boss's boss says, you better go talk to this person, they can help us, that's a really good recommendation. Another example, the first modern version of Windows NT, we're talking early mid-90s. I was particularly interested because they were doing some good things from the security viewpoint, right? I wrote a course on it, and I reached out to some people that I thought might be interested. Course wasn't even done yet, right? I sold lots of the course. Boy, I taught it like crazy, and there's lots of follow-on consulting. Now, I said sometimes it's good to have a reason to reach out, right? And it could be because you're starting consulting or you wrote something, or we're not necessarily comfortable doing that with everybody. I remember there's one of the first consultants I knew, Dave. Dave now works for, man, I just met him on a ski lift 2 years ago. He's working with a big internet service provider right now. I remember I got an email from him out of the blue. I hadn't heard from him in 6 months. It was just like, hey, Happy New Year. Hope things are going well. He was just touching bases with me, probably with lots of people, right? That's a reasonable thing to do. In fact, I've started doing this. Every New Year's, it's like I'll pick 20 or 30 people that I like, that I've either worked directly with or indirectly with, and I'll just reach out to them like, hey, how you doing? Right, just staying in touch. If you write an article or a book or a video, tell people that might be interested. My last book, Infosec Rockstar, I think I gave away well over 100 copies. Almost everyone I knew. It's like, just gave them a copy, emailed them, or didn't email. I couldn't give away electronic copies. It was an agreement with my publisher, but I gave away a lot of copies. And then probably close to 1,000 people, I told them they could have the book for free, just pay for like shipping and handling, which was like, I don't know, the envelope and like postage or something like that. Talk a little bit about surveys. Okay, you do a survey and tell people about it. You can use a free version of survey software. I use SurveyMonkey. I remember way back when phishing was new, I did a survey on phishing awareness. I just walked around with a clipboard and asked people. It's actually kind of fun. And from this survey, I put some results together, and people found it quite interesting. And, it was me like reaching out to people and so like, hey, I'm alive, I'm a consultant, but I have a reason to talk to you. I have something to offer. As some of you know, when it comes to consulting in InfoSec, I've done 3 fairly large surveys on what people were interested in and so forth, and what their top questions were. And a lot of that has gone into this course and some of my other talks. Now, the last one, I just came up with this about 1.5 years ago. Okay, there's some people you've worked with you would probably love to work with again. Right, I've got a list of some of the people that, for whatever reason, I really hit it off with. Could be that maybe we just had a lot in common. Maybe it was a great project. Maybe, who knows what it was. Just reach out to them and say, hey, remember when we did this? This was just like really fun. I hope we get a chance to work together again. I actually did that, and I ended up getting work from that. And I'm like pretty established. I didn't even really need work at this point. But that's a great way. And I was very, very honest. Like, these are people I'd really love to work with again. Maybe I'll hire them. Maybe they'll hire me. Maybe something similar. Who knows? Right? That's a very simple thing to do. Now, even if you talk to somebody a lot, it can be hard to transition to a talk about work, at least for me. And I'm like not a sales guy. I'm not comfortable doing a lot of these sales and marketing type things. That's not my background. I'm a geek. So there's this guy, David A. Fields. He wrote a book on consulting. He's actually written a couple books. Now, he's a management consultant, but his books are good. As a matter of fact, well, I say his books are good. One I haven't read yet. I'm going to. It's How to Hire Consultants. And I'm not from a management perspective. But he's got one on how to get clients. And he's got this technique he calls the turn. It's just brilliant. Now, you say this in your own words, right? Something like, hey, would you be open to having a separate conversation where we talk about your business and whether I can help you with achieving your goals? Right? Almost everyone's going to say yes, and it's a separate conversation. It's like, nah, I don't really want to talk about that. That's fine too, right? It's just so low pressure. It's so easy. How about direct outreach to people you don't know? Okay, this is harder, but it definitely works. Salespeople do this all the time. Now, I'm never going to be a salesperson. The idea of sales, I don't even like it. I should, right? I should become comfortable with it, but it's not hard. And it's not just for salespeople. It can be very effective for consultants. I know consultants in many fields that's how they get most of their clients. So you know those annoying spam-like things you get on LinkedIn? Yeah, I'm not talking about those, but you know, they can work. Good friend of mine, he's an accountant. He sold his accounting business because he decided he didn't like accounting. He was spending too much time working, not enough time with his daughter and so forth. And he's known as the heavy metal accountant, Eric Sokolin. Eric, his passion in his life is heavy metal music. He plays drums and he sings. Well, he has started consulting with accounting companies, not on accounting, on how to grow their business, and it's all direct outreach via LinkedIn. It's probably bordering on spam, like, I'm not sure, but it works, man. He's killing it. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that, right? But let me give some examples that actually work and are simple. First, I've got this great friend, Joe Heuer. Now, Joe works in healthcare, does a lot of work with state chapters of associations, and Joe is, at least in my mind, best known because when John McAfee was hiding from the police doing his crazy stuff in Belize, Joe was kind of doing the same thing. He was in Belize, he had his passport confiscated and so forth, and he was down there doing some volunteer work, and I guess he didn't bribe the right people. I don't know what happened, but a lot of his work are paid keynotes. He does other things as well. But if he does a paid keynote or other work with a state chapter of an association, he'll call the presidents of the other associations and say, hey, I just worked with your colleague here. This is what I did with him. Maybe I can help you with that. Also, now he's in a state capital. He's in Lansing, Michigan. And so he'll walk directly into association offices. Just find where they are. and I'll ask who's in charge of booking keynote speakers, and very respectfully, very politely say, hey, can I have 2 minutes of your time? And only talk for 2 minutes unless they want to talk longer. And it just works. Now let's look at an example in our field. All right, so let's look at this example. I said I had a bad example here. I got this a little while back. Hi, sir, comma, slash, madam. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out and blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is either spam or pretty close to the legal definition of spam, right? I'm not saying this is a good example, but there's some things they're doing really well. First of all, ignoring the hi, sir, slash, madam, it's informal, right? I hope you're doing well. They're telling me exactly what they do, right? What they want. They only want a few minutes. They just want to chat about software development. And like, yeah, it's a little spammy. It's more than a little spammy, but there's some things they do well here. A lot of things they don't do well. They could have at least looked up my name on my website, right? Yeah, but there's some things they're doing well, and I'm betting this works. I'm not suggesting you do anything like this, but just take away the good things and direct outreach. They're informal. You know exactly what they're reaching out for, and they only want a few minutes. So I mentioned that survey I did on phishing years ago, right? I reached out via email to people I didn't know or didn't know well. In some cases, they knew me. I didn't know they know who I was in many cases. Some cases, they'd never heard of me. I said, hey, did this phishing survey. Thought you might be interested in it. A lot of people thought I was trying to fish them, which was kind of funny. You can do this with any kind of content you produce. Now, Mike Muir. Mike's a SANS instructor, has been for a while. He actually helped me with this course. Sat in the first beta of this course, gave me his feedback, and he's been a consultant for a long time. He reaches out to people on LinkedIn, totally non-spammy, right? Both conversations via comments on articles and posts, and sometimes directly reaching out initially via messages. Only after initial conversations, where it makes sense, does he possibly talk about business and whether it makes sense to talk about possibly working together. Very low pressure. And it works. Now, a great way to get clients, if the people you don't already know and haven't worked with, have somebody refer you, right? A referral is a friend recommending or introducing a friend. Referrals just naturally happen sometimes, but we should be asking for them. Yeah, you ask for referrals. So in existing clients, right, is there anywhere else in this organization I could provide value? Or is there anyone else here that can help? Right, you're asking to help. You make yourself valuable. You're not saying anything like, hey, think there's anyone else here you know that might want to pay me? That's not what you're doing. You're trying to provide value. Well, among colleagues, hey, if you know anyone I can help, introduce us. Now, sometimes you can ask for specific referrals. A friend of mine texted me right before we started speaking, and it was interesting. She had a high-level position at Cisco for a while, and she's in the nonprofit space right now. And I asked, say, hey, can you introduce me to your counterpart in Asia Pacific? And she was like, yeah, that's so-and-so. I just talked to them today. They were a good friend of mine. And it was very easy. You can also say something like, if introducing me is inconvenient, do you mind if I reach out and mention your name? Now, if you have a new client, okay, and you're working on a project with them, I don't like to wait until the project's done successfully, or hopefully successfully, to ask for referrals. Wait until there's significant progress, right? And it looks like it's going to be success. You've done good things. Not you and them together. You've done some good things. That's when I like to ask for referrals. And, worst case, nothing happens, but you put the idea in their mind that, yeah, maybe Ted or Bruce or maybe they can help someone else here. Now, the next one I don't do much of, but referrals, asking for them in your local community can be very, very powerful. Now, I live in rural New Hampshire. There is isn't a lot of the type of Infosec work that I do in rural New Hampshire. And I don't do a lot of work with small businesses, although I probably enjoy it. But anyway, what you can do is when you normally interact with other professionals, just tell them, it's like, hey, you know what I do? You know, I do this or I do that, or you know, I secure small doctors' offices or whatever. You know, I'm a computer security guy. If anyone else that I can help, you know, just give them my information or connect us. So I have a doctor's appointment for my yearly physical in 3.5 weeks. Who knows if it's going to happen, right? But I could say to my doctor knows me well. He knows what I do. It's like, hey, doc, you know, if you know anyone that I can help, and they see so many people. There's a lawyer I'm talking to right now about living will and stuff like that. I can do the same thing with him. My accountant I just talked to, because it's kind of tax time. Now, if I were in a metropolitan area, let's say New York City, or even certainly Boston or something like that, I'd be doing this all the time. Right now, it could work for me, absolutely. It could. I do a little bit of this. I don't expect it to actually produce much because I live in a rural area. Another thing you can do, volunteering. Volunteering is a great way to get clients. It's not as fast as referrals. It's not as fast as people coming to you or you reaching out to people. But boy, there's always conferences and user groups looking for volunteers. I was just looking at the Wild West Hacking Fest website. I've submitted some information. Hopefully I'm going to go there next year. I missed it this year. But they're looking for volunteers, right? Now, even if you're a relative newbie, even a total newbie, you're going to meet and interact with some senior people in our industry as peers. Now, they qualify as people you've worked with before, and they're more likely to hire you. And this works really well if you volunteer over and over with the same organizations. Also being able to say, hey, I work with Black Cat or the Wild West Hacking Fest or whatever, adds a lot of credibility, and it should. Now, besides just in our field, you can also volunteer for various good causes, charities, and so forth. A lot of high-level people do. Now, they may not be able to hire you, but somebody that works for them may be, right? More likely refer you to somebody that can. And I'll tell you, when the boss or the CEO says, go talk to Ted, man, that carries a lot of weight. Now, best to volunteer, of course, because you believe in the cause. In New Hampshire, I have volunteered with Special Olympics with swimming several times, not because I expected to get work, but because I believe in the cause. I think it's a good thing. Now, it says speaking briefly because in another chapter of the course, we go into speaking a lot. Speaker is considered an instant expert and has high visibility. So I gave a talk at Microsoft once. It was a local Microsoft conference. They gave me the last slot. Now, this conference was Saturday and a Sunday. It was on programming, and I gave a session on secure programming. This was years ago. And I spoke last talk on Sunday. I had 4 people in the class. One was literally sitting in the front and snoring really loudly. The other 3 seemed pretty interested, right? I remember telling this friend of mine who's in high-tech public relations what happened. And he was like, man, you spoke at Microsoft. That's awesome. It's like, yeah, but there were 4 people there and one was asleep. He kept hammering. It's like, you spoke at Microsoft. It doesn't matter what happened. That just gives you a lot of credibility. And way back then, I did use that credibility. Now, even if a speaker has almost nobody, even if they gave a horrible speech, you still spoke. It still positions you as an expert. I'm not saying give a bad speech. I'm saying hopefully you'll have more. Hopefully you won't have 25% of your audience loudly snoring. Now, anybody can speak. It's not hard. Even if you have a year or 2, you no doubt have some experiences, maybe a case study you can share, maybe how you learn how to do something, right? Now, a lot of conferences are becoming virtual now. And some of us are afraid to stand up in front of a crowd and speak, but it's not as tough if we're online for some of us. And boy, some of these conferences are starting to proliferate. I think there's more opportunities than ever. What was it I was just looking at? Was it Taco Con? I just saw this online. I'm not going to get the details right, but they want people to talk for 25 minutes, but the last 5 minutes has to be on your favorite taco, right? This is a pretty low pressure way to start talking. Probably be a lot of fun too. I was busy when that's actually going to happen. And there was Pancake Con that was on too, and a few others. Writing. So just like a speaker, a writer's considered an expert. I was always a horrible writer. I hated writing. You know what I found? If nobody's making me write, I don't mind doing it. Yeah. But there's a lot of things you can write, or we'll use the term author, which helps make you an authority. It gives you credibility and visibility as a consultant. So an old friend who's gone through this course, Ken Hartman. Ken was originally my facilitator for a SANS class in Madison, Wisconsin. We became friends pretty quickly. And one of his SANS certifications, now with a SANS certification, besides taking the exam, you get the so-called silver cert, you can also write what do they call it, a research paper? You get a gold certification. Almost nobody does it, okay? He wrote a gold certification. He wrote one on legal aspects of BitTorrent, I believe. He didn't know anything about it. He was just interested in it. And boy, has that gotten him a lot of visibility. And yeah, it's gotten him some work online. Now, the best thing you can write, of course, is a book. You don't have to write a book by any means. But by the way, you're all capable of writing a book if you're here. If I can write a book, you can write a book. Trust me. But I'm not saying after anything you write, articles, and plenty of places to put articles as well. LinkedIn articles and Medium, and doesn't have to be brilliant prose. It just has to be something that adds value. Right? Writing's a learned skill. You can learn to write reasonably well. I did. If I did, you can. English isn't even my first language, so. All right, networking. Let's step back here. First of all, I have to tell you this. I'm an introvert, okay? So networking doesn't necessarily come easy to me. I am a classic introvert. That doesn't mean I'm not friendly. That doesn't mean that I'm not social, but I'm not naturally social all the time, right? Now, networking is really easy because there's lots of opportunity, but it takes time. So networking is about helping others, providing value to others. It's not about going to people when you need something. I have an old friend. I only hear from him when he needs something. Right? That's his idea of networking. It doesn't work that well. So we break networking into roughly 3 types. Okay. People you're already friendly with. Maybe you're actual friends, or maybe you work with them, you're friendly, but you're not friends because you don't have enough in common, or you haven't spent enough time together, or you've got like kids, you have no time. Stay in touch with them, right? Occasional direct outreach. You can network with work acquaintances, right? They're definitely not friends, but you just know them through work. Maybe you barely know them. You get to know them, ask them out to lunch, go for a drink or for a coffee or something like that. Now, of course, this is harder right now for the next month or two, right? Networking's changed a little bit. We'll get to that. In networking events, generally people you don't know at all, at least most of them. So networking events, okay, it's so easy to be there. Like there's one person you know, maybe you went with them, you don't talk to them. You gotta talk to other people. This is not rocket science. This is not hard. Look for a friendly face. Look for somebody just standing alone. Walk up and say hi. You don't have to say anything else. If they don't answer, you can walk away if you want. Right? Most people, I believe, are naturally interesting if you take interest in them. Everybody has some interesting things about them. Even my friends who are accountants, I have 3 friends that are very interesting accountants. Actually, I got 4 friends that are accountants who are not dull. My accountant, he's really good, but he's not that exciting. I forgot to know he'd probably be interesting. Right, exchange contact info. You don't have to physically do it because if you know their name, they're probably on LinkedIn if you got anything in common whatsoever. Now, networking has changed a bit at least for the foreseeable future. A lot of networking today is absolutely Zoom, right? Interesting. I've been on 2 different Zoom calls recently with people I don't know. I mentioned before I'm a foodie and a cocktail geek. I was on a Zoom call with Cocktail Con. There's 7 or 8 or 9 of us. I didn't know anybody. I just kind of got on and talked to each other, and everybody had a drink. And did one with a Facebook group as well with booze hackers. There are some really cool people there that I got to know, and it's definitely networking. And one of them was interesting. He's like, "Oh yeah, we've met before at a conference," and I didn't remember that well. It's like, yeah, I guess we have. And some of the people I knew by name, some I didn't, but that was networking. I was having fun. It's like 9 or 10 at night. I was having a drink and just listening, and I spoke a little bit too. I primarily listened because, again, I'm an introvert. Trade associations. Disclaimer, I don't do this, okay? If you work particularly in one vertical, or you find you start working, you get multiple clients in one vertical, whether it's real estate or funeral parlors or insurance or whatever, there will be a trade association for it. There's a trade association for everything. Just to give you some bizarre examples of how many, there's a trade association for hair replacement surgeons. Yeah, they have a trade association. Funeral directors, they have an enormous trade association. They have apparently one of the craziest conferences in Vegas once a year. It's like the only time they can have fun and smile visibly, right? If you're working in one vertical or with one type of client a lot, look for an associated trade group. A lot of my friends have done this. A lot of people that have gone through this class have done this. Consider joining, right? Network, right? Volunteer, get involved, maybe speak. Do they have a newsletter or journal? Can you write for it? Maybe outreach to members, right? It might be a trade association that has nothing to do with what we do, but you work in that field. You work with insurance companies or realtors, and again, there's a trade association for almost everything. And if I found myself working a lot or perhaps interested in a lot in a particular vertical in business, I would absolutely do this. Advertising. Okay, this is pretty advanced, but we got to mention it. First of all, there's 2 types of advertising. One is brand advertising. Don't do that. Okay. Brand advertising is pretty cool. This is like Super Bowl ads and like having your company name on the side of what is it, Goodyear blimp, or is it the Goodrich, whoever has the blimp. This is brand advertising. You're not trying to get people to do anything. You're just getting them to know about you. This is like most Budweiser advertising and so forth. For consultants, the only thing that's really interesting is direct response. And man, I love direct response. Direct response is when you're trying to get somebody to do something, okay? You're trying to get somebody to do something. Take an action. You might try to get them to opt in, to give you a name and an email for something. Now, nobody is going to click on your ad in Facebook or anywhere else and then instantly hire you as a consultant and pay you lots of money. That's simply not going to happen. However, if people get to know you, they will hire you. Now, a lot of you know I have an email list, right? People sign up. I send them things. I tell them I'm giving this webinar. I've written this thing. I've got this video. And I've played a little bit with advertising to get people on my email lists as well. And they've gotten to know me. And some have become close personal friends. Some have hired me as well and so forth. We call this a multi-step sales process. It's not like you do something and people hire you, right? It takes a while. Now, there are some people that teach consultants how to use advertising to get clients. I don't recommend you stand here. There's a brilliant man named Frank Kern, Kern, and that's one thing that Frank Kern does. And I'll type his name in. Brilliant guy. This is not a place to begin for sure. Some of my friends do this as consultants. It's not a place to start. All right. Referral and subcontracting arrangements. I refer people fairly often. Sometimes people will refer me. If you find you're getting a lot of work from referrals from a specific source, you may want to have some sort of referral fees or referral arrangement, right? Also, if you find one organization is using you extensively, maybe you want to represent them to their clients or customers. I've had organizations I've started consulting for that as time has gone in, they've brought me in and they've brought me to their customers representing them. And these can be absolutely phenomenal relationships where they work, right? So they just will naturally occur sometimes. Now, which techniques are going to work for you, right? Gave you 11 techniques. We could come up with even more. I don't know, right? You don't either. So you try multiple techniques, and you know what you use? You use what works and what you like doing. And I don't know what's going to work for you. So, simple example. I teach for SANS, right? I get some clients from teaching from SANS, not a lot. Not a lot. I have a lot of fun teaching with SANS, right? But that's not my main source of clients. I know other consultants, that's their main source. I get clients from books that I've written and books that I'm working on and things that I've written. I have other friends that have written books that get zero business from the book. That doesn't mean they shouldn't have written the book. That just means that they're not getting work from that. So I knew one consultant who used to get most of his work. I know him. I used to get most of his work from blogging, from writing online. That just kind of stopped working after a while, stopped working as well. Now he's getting most of his work from speaking. He doesn't speak a lot, but he speaks at a few conferences, and that gets him his work. Now, I have 2 other webcasts coming up. SANS, tomorrow, consulting on the side. You do not have to jump right into consulting full time, right? Some people do. Some people start consulting on the side and may transition into consulting full time or may consult on the side forever. I have a friend who's been consulting on the side along with his main job for probably close to 20 years now, and he's never going to leave his main job until he retires. He just likes it too much. And tomorrow is 3:30 p.m. Is that what I wrote? Yeah, 3:30. Right. We're going to talk about the top question that I get on consulting on the side, including conflict of interest and can I do it? How do I get clients? And will my job let me? And also, this one's a little further out in June. We'll talk about consulting, what makes a good consultant. We're going to look at it from 2 viewpoints. From hiring consultants, what does the other side think? And also from being a consultant, how can you be a good consultant? And this one is a little further out. Yeah, the slides are not there yet. They will be, or they should be. I actually emailed a PDF of the slides to Carol, who's in charge, right before we started, like 5 or 10 minutes before we started. Okay, they are up now. Okay. Coming up, well, my online class, it's going to be online at some point. I'm not sure when we're going to schedule that. I'm actively talking to SANS. As you might know, SANS has pivoted to being an entirely online company for the next few months and for a while out and so forth. Also, it turns out I've got 23 different videos out on consulting. And got a quick question on pricing model. We don't have really much time to go into this in much detail. Pricing is all over the place. I do cover it in a lot more detail in some of the other webinars. Here's a guideline. Figure out how much you're making in a full-time job per hour. This is not including benefits and so forth, right? But what you're getting hourly, and at least double or triple that for an hourly rate. So if you're making $100,000 a year, working 2,000 hours a year, just using round numbers, that's 50 weeks at 40 hours a week. That's $50 an hour. At least be charging 100. Some would say at least 3 times that, at least 150. And now we're out of time. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Okay, slides are up. You can download them. I'm simple enough to contact. I'm ted@demop.com. And thank you, everybody. And maybe I'll see some of you tonight. Feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and so forth. And thank you for all of the feedback.